The gift of flight. The twin moons of Salvon Prime cast eerie shadows across the endless fields of rusted starship hulls. Among the towering piles of scrap metal and discarded plasma cores, a small garage flickered with warm light, the only sign of life in this graveyard of dreams. Horn Greer wiped sweat from his brow as he stepped back from his latest creation. For 6 months, he had worked in secret, pouring his heart into something that defied all logic. The ship before him wasn't large or impressive by galactic standards, but it was perfect for its intended purpose. Jorath, Horn called softly into the shadows. It's finished. From the darkest corner of the hangar, something massive stirred. Jorath of the Korean bloodline emerged slowly, his once mighty wings dragging uselessly behind him like tattered banners. The ancient dragon scales, once gleaming like starlight, were now dulled by years of despair. His powerful hind legs, shattered in the Dominion Wars, could no longer support his enormous frame. The anti-gravity harness Horn had built for him hummed quietly as Jorath approached the ship. His golden eyes, still fierce despite his condition, studied the vessel with wonder. "You actually built it," Jorath whispered, his voice carrying traces of the thunder that once shook entire star systems. "Even after I told you not to waste your time." Horn grinned, running his oil-stained hands along the ship's smooth hull. "You said not to waste my time. You never said I had to listen." The ship was a masterpiece of compassion and engineering. Instead of traditional controls, delicate hydraulic arms responded to the slightest movement. The cockpit was molded like a protective cradle, fitted with cushions Horn had sewn by hand. Every curve, every support strut was designed for Jorath's unique anatomy. "I won't fit," Jorath said quietly, doubt clouding his ancient features. "You will," Horn replied confidently. "I measured everything while you thought I was scanning for injuries. The seat matches your exact specifications: tail recess, wing arch, spinal curve. Everything." Together, they carefully positioned Jorath in the ship's cradle. As the systems accepted his weight, lights shimmered across the control panel like a constellation coming to life. For the first time in centuries, Jorath's body was fully supported, weightless, free. "Start the neural interface," Horn instructed, flipping a series of switches. "No manual controls, just think about where you want to go." Jorath closed his eyes. The ship hummed, rose from the ground, and turned gracefully toward the open hangar doors. Then, something magical happened. Jorath flew. He didn't race through the sky like the warriors of old. Instead, he glided with reverent silence over the junk fields, spinning slowly in the starlight. His physical wings remained useless at his sides, but he soared on wings of human ingenuity and friendship. Horn watched from the platform, arms folded, his face tight with emotion. When Jorath finally landed an hour later, the dragon's golden eyes were bright with tears. "You gave me back the stars," Jorath whispered. Horn shook his head. "I just gave you a seat. You did the rest." As they shared this moment of triumph, neither noticed the communication tower's warning light beginning to blink red. A high-priority governmental signal was descending fast, and their peaceful world was about to change forever. The diplomatic storm. The morning desert wind carried more than dust, it brought the low whine of engines built for intimidation. Horn stood outside his garage, sipping bitter coffee from a dented thermos, watching 3 sleek obsidian ships descend in perfect formation. These weren't ordinary vessels. Each bore the insignia of different galactic sectors, one from the core worlds, one from the eastern territories, and the third marked with the golden crest of the Vidian arbiters. You didn't see that kind of diplomatic unity unless someone important was panicking. The first ship landed with mechanical precision. A tall figure in silver-threaded robes emerged, flanked by 2 guards carrying pulse staves that hummed with barely contained energy. "Horn Greer," she called, her voice filtered through a translation device worn like an expensive brooch. "That's what my debts say," Horn replied, setting down his thermos. "What's the charge this time?" The second ship touched down behind her. "No charges yet," the diplomat said, producing a glowing data pad. But you've been documented harboring and modifying technology for a known biological entity under conditional silence protocols. Horn's jaw tightened. You mean Jorath? I mean Project Emberthorn, she corrected coldly. You've interfered with a galactically sealed biological weapon. That entity is not permitted to operate any vessel. He's a person, Horn said, his voice dangerous. He's a weapon. Before Horn could respond, Jorath's voice boomed from behind them like distant thunder. Then your weapons fear too much if they must crawl here begging. The diplomats turned as Jorath rolled into view, still in his ship, hovering beside the hangar with newfound dignity. The glow in his throat cast ominous shadows as he regarded the intruders. I did not ask to be locked away, Jorath continued, his ancient authority filling every word. I was promised sanctuary, not burial. The Vidian envoy stepped forward, her composure cracking slightly. Your activity has triggered ancient defense protocols. There are factions who consider your resurrection an act of war. Jorath's wings twitched slightly, a sign Horn recognized as barely controlled fury. Then let them try. Horn moved protectively between the diplomats and his friend. He flew. He didn't fire weapons, didn't hurt anyone, he just flew. And I gave him the means to do it. You want someone to blame? Blame me. The air grew still, charged with tension. Then something impossible happened. Above them, the clouds began to fold inward like fabric being gathered by invisible hands. Reality itself seemed to shimmer, and every diplomatic device started glowing with symbols none of them recognized. Jorath's ship responded, humming with resonant energy that had nothing to do with its mechanical systems. A rift opened in the sky, not violent or destructive, but elegant and purposeful. A voice echoed across their minds, ancient and layered with harmonics that spoke directly to their souls. One spark can awaken the blood. The first of flight has moved again. We answer the cry. Horn stared upward in wonder and terror. Stars save us, he whispered. What did we just start? The rift widened, and through it came something that would change the galaxy forever. The awakening. The sky above Salvon Prime rippled like water disturbed by a stone. The rift widened with deliberate grace, its center glowing violet while edges shimmered in deep gold. Light spilled across the wreck fields, transforming the graveyard of ships into something almost sacred. Through that impossible doorway, wings emerged, not mechanical like Jorath's ship, but real, living, beating with the rhythm of a heart that had waited eons to fly again. The dragon that descended was nothing like the broken warrior they knew. This one was younger, taller, untouched by the wars that had shattered Jorath's people. Its scales gleamed like molten pearl, catching the light of two suns. Most striking were its eyes, layered pupils, one vertical slit and one horizontal, twisting over each other like orbiting moons. The creature floated down with regal silence, wings spread wide but unmoving, as if gravity itself had bent to its will. The diplomats stumbled backward, their expensive robes hissing against the desert grit. The guards raised their weapons, but no orders came. They were trained to handle riots and criminals, not living myths. Jorath stared upward from his ship, breath caught between reverence and terror. I know that silhouette, he murmured, his ancient voice cracking with emotion. It was painted on the walls of the great sanctum. The dragon landed gracefully and spoke, not through the air, but directly into their minds. Their consciousness rang with a harmony of voices, masculine and feminine, young and old, all speaking as one. We are all Orion, blood-bound kin of the first breath, the drift singer, the tidebinder. We were among those who fled when the great fire turned brother against brother. Jorath's golden eyes widened with recognition and disbelief. You're from the Divide. The old stories, you're supposed to be dead. We are from before the Divide, all Orion replied, the mental voice growing more focused, more personal. We are from the time when your people danced with stars and sang with comets. Horn stepped forward slowly, still processing the impossibility before him. Grease stained his hands, and doubt clouded his mind. Why now? He asked. Why show up now, after all these years? The magnificent dragon turned its layered gaze upon the humble mechanic. Because the paralyzed one flew. Because the one who could not rise was given flight. And that, human, is a prophecy older than this galaxy's stars. Alarion moved closer to Jorath's ship, each step fluid as flowing water. The ancient dragon leaned down until their faces were nearly touching. You broke the silence lock, Alarion said, now speaking with a single, melodious voice. The machine you ride, the gift given to you, carried your flame beyond the seal. The blood woke, and we woke with it. Jorath, overwhelmed by emotions he'd thought long dead, lowered his massive head. I thought I was the last, he whispered. For so long, I believed I was the end of everything we were. Alarion's snout gently touched Jorath's scarred brow, a gesture of infinite compassion. You were never the end, old warrior. You were the pause, the breath held before the song begins again. And now we begin again. The youngest diplomat, her face pale with the weight of galactic implications, stammered, what does this mean for the Concord? For the peace treaties? But neither dragon answered. They were lost in a reunion centuries in the making, while Horn stood watching, slowly realizing that his simple act of kindness had awakened something that would reshape the stars themselves. The choice. The reunion between the two dragons sent ripples across the galaxy faster than any communication system could carry. Within hours, the skies above Salvon Prime darkened with incoming fleets, not just diplomatic vessels, but full military formations from a dozen different factions. Horn watched the armada gather through his workshop's cracked window, counting at least 50 warships arranged in defensive positions. The Galactic Concord had mobilized everything they had, while reports flooded in of similar responses from the outer colonies and independent systems. They're afraid, Jorath observed from his ship, which now hovered permanently beside Alarion. The two dragons had spent the night sharing memories through their ancient mental bond, reconnecting across centuries of separation. They should be, Alarion replied, though their tone carried sadness rather than threat. Our ancestors were bred for war, shaped into weapons that could crack planets and drain stars. They remember the old stories. A new ship descended, larger and more ornate than the others. Admiral Kestra of the Concord fleet emerged with a full honor guard, her face grim with the weight of galactic security. This ends now, she declared, pointing an energy weapon directly at Alarion. By authority of the Galactic Peace Accords, I order you to return to whatever void you emerged from. Your presence violates every treaty that keeps this galaxy stable. Alarion's eyes flashed with anger, the air around them shimmering with barely contained power. You dare threaten us with toys? But Jorath moved his ship between them, his voice carrying the wisdom of ages. Wait, young one. Violence will only prove their fears justified. Horn stepped forward, his mechanics' coveralls a stark contrast to the military finery surrounding them. What exactly are you afraid of? He asked Admiral Kestra. One dragon helping another. An act of friendship. Friendship. The Admiral's laugh was bitter. Do you have any idea what these creatures are capable of? The last dragon war nearly tore the galaxy apart. Entire star systems were reduced to ash and memory. That was 1,000 years ago, Horn protested. These aren't the same dragons who fought in your ancient wars. The blood remembers, Admiral Kestra replied coldly. Genetic memory, passed down through generations. They're hardwired for destruction. Alarion's massive form rippled with barely controlled energy. Around them, the air began to heat and distort. For a moment, it seemed the Admiral's fears would be proven right. Then Jorath spoke, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. She's right. Everyone turned to stare at the paralyzed dragon in shock. We are weapons, Jorath continued, his golden eyes reflecting centuries of pain. Every instinct, every reflex, every thought, we were crafted for war. I've spent lifetimes trying to forget what I was made to do. Alarion's anger flickered, replaced by confusion. Brother, what are you saying? Jorath's ship drifted closer to his newly awakened kin. I'm saying we have a choice. For the first time in our species' history, we can choose what we become. The ancient dragon looked around at the assembled fleets, at the terrified diplomats, at Horn standing protectively nearby. This human gave me flight not so I could rain destruction from the skies, but so I could remember what it felt like to soar freely among the stars. He showed me that our power doesn't have to define us. Alarion was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. Finally, they spoke. What would you have us do, old warrior? Return to the void? Pretend we don't exist? No, Jorath replied firmly. I propose something far more radical. I propose we prove them wrong. Horn looked up at his friend, understanding dawning in his eyes. You want to show them dragons can be more than weapons. Exactly, Jorath confirmed. But it won't be easy, and it won't be quick. It will require trust on both sides, something that's been lacking for 1,000 years. Admiral Kestra lowered her weapon slightly, conflict clear on her face. And if you're wrong? If the old instincts take over? Jorath met her gaze steadily. Then you'll have your proof that some things can't be changed. But I believe they can. One mechanic's gift of flight taught me that even the most broken things can soar again. The moment stretched like a held breath, the fate of two species hanging in the balance. Finally, Alarion spread their magnificent wings, not in threat, but in salute. We accept this challenge, old warrior. Let us see if dragons can learn to be something more than their legends. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would come next. New dawn. 1 year later, the salvage fields of Salvon Prime had transformed beyond recognition. What was once a graveyard of broken dreams had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a neutral ground where species that had warred for millennia learned to coexist. Horn's small garage had expanded into a sprawling workshop, but its heart remained unchanged. The familiar sound of tools on metal echoed across the facility as he worked on his latest project, a transport vessel designed to carry both human and dragon passengers in comfort. You're making the wing supports too rigid, Jorath observed, his ship hovering nearby. The ancient dragon had become Horn's constant companion and advisor, their friendship deepening with each passing day. Says the dragon who couldn't fly until I built him wings, Horn replied with a grin, adjusting the hydraulics. Trust the mechanic. Their banter was interrupted by a familiar mental voice. The morning patrol reports all clear, Alarion announced, their massive form gliding gracefully overhead. No hostile ships detected within 3 sectors. In the months following their first encounter, more dragons had emerged from hidden sanctuaries across the galaxy. Some came curious, others desperate, all drawn by the impossible sight of their people flying freely once again. Not all had been peaceful, several had arrived filled with ancient rage and the desire for vengeance. It was Jorath who had convinced them to try a different path. His words carried weight precisely because he understood their pain, their fury, their sense of abandonment. One by one, the newcomers had chosen cooperation over conflict. Admiral Kestra's ship descended for her weekly inspection, a routine that had become more diplomatic meeting than military oversight. The Admiral emerged, her stance far more relaxed than it had been a year ago. Status report, she requested, though her tone suggested curiosity rather than suspicion. 17 dragons now in residence, Horn replied, wiping grease from his hands. 3 more applications for sanctuary pending Concord approval. 0 incidents this week. And the integration program? Alarion landed nearby, their voice carrying pride. Young Nyrain completed their first solo cargo run to the Outer Rim yesterday. Perfect safety record, delivered medical supplies to 3 colony worlds ahead of schedule. Admiral Kestra nodded, making notes on her data pad. The transformation still amazed her. Dragons who had once been viewed as harbingers of destruction were now serving as emergency responders, exploration scouts, and even peacekeepers. Their natural abilities, channeled through Horn's ingenious ship designs, had proven invaluable for humanitarian missions. There's been a development, the Admiral said, her tone growing serious. The Concord Council has reached a decision about your formal status. Horn and Jorath exchanged glances. They'd been waiting for this news for months. And? Jorath prompted. The Dragon Sanctuary of Salvon Prime is hereby recognized as an independent protectorate under Galactic law, Admiral Kestra announced. Full diplomatic status, with rights to self-governance and representation in the Concord Assembly. Alarian's eyes widened. We're citizens. More than that, the Admiral smiled. You're equals. Full partners in galactic civilization, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Horn felt tears welling in his eyes. The little garage where he'd once worked alone had become the birthplace of a new age. What about the factions that still oppose this? The ones who want to see dragons extinct? They'll adapt or be left behind, Admiral Kestra replied firmly. The galaxy is changing, and change requires courage from all of us. As the Admiral's ship departed, the three friends, human, ancient dragon, and newly awakened kin, stood together watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. More dragons could be seen in the distance, some flying in graceful formations, others working alongside human engineers on collaborative projects. Did you ever imagine it would come to this? Alarian asked. When you first started building that ship? Horn chuckled, running his hand along Jorath's scarred flank. I just wanted to help a friend fly again. I never thought it would change the galaxy. The best revolutions start that way, Jorath observed wisely. One person caring enough to try, even when everyone else says it's impossible. As the twin moons rose over Salvon Prime, casting their familiar silver shadows across a field that was no longer filled with ruins but with hope, Horn smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't any weapon or ancient bloodline. It was kindness, freely given, with no expectation of reward. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that kindness would teach an entire galaxy how to fly. The end.